Good evening, everybody. This is a live emergency briefing as the severe weather outbreak that we've been anticipating for days is now happening with convection erupting across western Oklahoma down into northwestern Texas. Just a couple of severe thunderstorm warnings so far, and a lot of this convection is relatively isolated, elevated as well. It does look like there is a supercell structure to the west of Granite right now that is producing some pretty stout hail. Definitely has a elevated appearance to it. And this is all ahead of an anticipated tornado outbreak expected tomorrow. And you can definitely see that this is an elevated supercell. Basically a convergent zone out ahead of it. Maybe a bit of a elevated couplet as well to the northwest of Mangum. And you can definitely see all this inflow streaming in. Probably northerlies there as well, a convergent area. But that mesocyclone, the elevated mesocyclone, is located just to the northwest of Mangum. And this convection is going to continue to organize across western Oklahoma. Eventually, it looks like as that upper level system ejects from the southwest, that the greatest likelihood for tornadoes will be down into southwestern Oklahoma, up into the South Oklahoma City metro potentially, and across that southern swath of Oklahoma, maybe into far northern Texas as well, but mainly just to the north of the Red River, as that surface low is expected to track right about in that direction. And also, there's winter weather advisories to the north of that. So a severe thunderstorm watch is banking right up against those winter weather advisories. That snow is going to move in later once the cold pocket of air begins to eject. And let me show you some of those watches and those warnings right in place right now. That severe thunderstorm watch that was just issued. And it looks like the greatest threat of tornadoes tomorrow is going to be over much of the state of Mississippi, even southern Mississippi, from the I-20 corridor all the way through the entire portion of the state. Tupelo, you could be included in that as well. And make sure my live is running here. Looks like it's still running. Good. Show you these hazards right now as well. Winter storm warning across the upper 2 to 3 tier of counties. And this is textbook Oklahoma, where you have the winter storm warning banked right up against that severe thunderstorm watch. So here you can see the severe thunderstorm watch in pink or maroon down here, salmon, whatever that color is. And then you've got a winter weather advisory in purple in between. That's where majority of icing and some sleet. And then the heaviest snow is going to be found in the winter storm warning area. That includes Woodward, Enid, Osage County, includes Wichita, all the way up through the Kansas City area, just to the north of St. Louis, but St. Louis is included in that winter weather advisory as well. And there is an enhanced risk now. I know that this came out just after we did our live briefing this morning, but here is the enhanced risk by the Storm Prediction Center. Models have trended up in instability, and even though they're trending up, it's really that cold surface temperature bias that the models will have outside of that mid-range. We've been well aware of that bias as we've been predicting these wintertime outbreaks the entire winter. But there you can see the hatch area for the strong tornado potential. It includes almost the entire state of Mississippi. It does include Jackson, includes all the way up. Both Jacksons, Jackson, Mississippi, and Jackson, Tennessee, are included in that risk for strong tornadoes, as is Memphis as well. And even extreme eastern Arkansas. By about 11 a.m. or so, that convective line is going to be in northeastern Arkansas, sliding up, pushing off to the east. So into the early afternoon hours is when that's expected to move into the Memphis area, and that includes a strong tornado threat across Memphis, certainly. And now I'm going to take a look right now at the detailed models. We'll start off with the prediction tonight, and we'll assess the tornado potential across Oklahoma. Let me make sure we're zoomed in properly. Looks like we're zoomed into Oklahoma. First, I want to show you the timing of that convective line. And look at that surface low. It does look like it's coming in a little bit further south now in the 4Z HRRR model, coming in from southwest and northeast, just to the south of the Red River by 8Z, which is about 2 in the morning. And boy, that really has that tornado threat hugging the surface low right along the Red River. So I do think it is going to be a southern Oklahoma type of an event, especially if you do believe this latest HRRR model coming in a little bit further south with that surface low right along the Red River. Let's take a look at the 3-kilometer Cape analysis. First, let me zoom this out a little and get a clean transfer. I'm actually live in the Columbus, Mississippi area right now, in position for tomorrow. Probably going to head west toward Greenville, may head north. Still making that forecast right now in real time. But this is going to be the greatest likelihood of a late night tornado threat over the next 4 hours or so. It looks like at about 2 in the morning, you're going to have this supercell that's going to be moving right along that surface low track coming out of western Texas, the southeastern Texas panhandle. And so that's at 7Z, about 1 a.m. This is about midnight, and a pretty accurate depiction of the convective blob from western Oklahoma into northwestern Texas. And as that surface low starts to organize, that's when that embedded supercell there couples with that surface low ejection. And this is definitely going to be associated with the strongest wind shear, also the strongest 0 to 3 kilometer Cape. And that's going to be associated with the greatest tornado potential as well. Oh boy, not as much in the way of that 3-kilometer Cape along that boundary and ahead of the surface low as some of the earlier model runs were indicating. It's like maybe a narrow ribbon, some low-level Cape expected right along that boundary. Maybe a little bit of an enhanced area of 3-kilometer Cape that supercell might be able to latch onto. Oh boy, it looks like the HRRR model does try to expand that area of low-level instability down near the Ardmore area by about 4 in the morning, 4 or 5 in the morning, south central Oklahoma. And I do think there could be a couple tornado warnings, probably just a windbag event, more severe thunderstorm type of action, convection, and then a little bit of a skinny squall line that's going to move through the Dallas area in the early morning hours. So that's likely why there is that severe thunderstorm watch instead of a tornado watch issued tonight. And then by 15Z Thursday, you can see the rapid warm advection happening, already starting to see a hint at some renegades. This is the main front. So usually these events in Dixie Alley will feature the main front, and then you get these prefrontal confluence lines out ahead of the front, little lines of confluence that can fire those renegade supercells. Usually also the greatest wind shear is located in the vicinity of those renegades, stepping back to the 3Z HRRR. And then they start to take shape across southern Arkansas and also down near the Vicksburg Natchez area as well, down into west central Mississippi. That's about 16Z, so about 10, 11 a.m., late morning hours, you start to get some maturation of those individual storms. It looks to me like this prefrontal confluence line is going to set up right over Mississippi by about 18Z. And that's when there certainly could be the development of some isolated supercells out ahead of it. Boy, it looks like there are a lot of renegades over central and northern Mississippi. Not sure if those are going to be robust enough to develop that tornado potential, but any supercell that's able to form within that low-level jet is certainly going to have the potential of producing a strong, potentially long-track tornado. But boy, the instability, let's see if it's ramped up. And it does look like there's a greater amount of instability. This is by 19Z. Notice how the blue there is about 1,000 plus, so that's a lot more Cape than we were dealing with in the models leading up. And that is often what happens during these wintertime setups, is as you get up close to the event, suddenly the convective allowing models, those short-range models, do a much better job at depicting just how warm those surface temperatures are going to be. And that's why you have that very thick area of Cape dominating the entire state of Mississippi, eastern Louisiana. This is by 20Z, so that's at about 2 p.m. Central Standard Time. And that shows the northern nose of the instability reaching all the way up, surface-based instability through the Memphis area. But boy, that further south track is definitely evident here in the NAM. Greater instability, though, probably as that elevated mix layer is more stout and those surface temperatures are warmer. Definitely more breaks in the clouds. A large area of 1,000+ Cape, storm relative helicity, quite substantial as well, especially in the northeastern portion of the state. So this is telling me that we may not want to go too far west, all the way to the Mississippi River at least. Probably want to get up in the I-55 corridor, just a little bit to the west, maybe to the northwest of Columbus, work that 82 corridor. Southern edge of the greatest wind shear is co-located with that instability axis that is lifting off to the north. I do think that the wind shear is stronger over northern Mississippi into western Tennessee, but the greatest instability right about there lifts all the way up through northern Mississippi. And look at that sheer march eastward and build all the way down south through the I-20 corridor. Very strong wind shear, and you can see all these little blips, all these little dots. Those are all renegade storms. And if they're able to root and become mature supercells, and they certainly will have the threat of strong, long-track tornadoes. You're going to have these renegades along this prefrontal confluence line along the I-20 corridor, another couple prefrontal confluence lines, and then you have the main front hanging back along the Mississippi River. Multiple rounds of strong tornado potential, it appears. And look at that, the 0Z HRRR definitely favoring that I-20 corridor convergence. So I'm right here right now in the Columbus area. You have Highway 82 that goes west to east across the state. 20Z, 19Z, about noon to 1 p.m. Definitely shows an abundance of these storms developing across the state of Mississippi. Developing first out near Natchez, Vicksburg area, moving rapidly off to the northeast. The greatest wind shear definitely in the northern portion of the state, but these storms really invigorate by about 3 p.m. as they get into eastern Mississippi and then start to pass into Alabama. I mean, these are nasty storms here along I-20. Tuscaloosa, Birmingham, northern Alabama, all the way up into middle Tennessee, all the way back even toward the New Orleans area, southeastern Louisiana. Certainly could even have a couple tornadoes down there with that 50-knot low-level jet lagging all the way down into southeastern Louisiana. So it looks to me like this is going to be an outbreak of tornadoes. And we've looked at all the parameters here for days leading up to this, being well aware that as we get closer, the instability will likely verify a lot higher than some of the medium range models were showing. This is the significant tornado parameter. Looks like it's maximized right about in this area. Columbus, up toward Tupelo, back up into southwestern Tennessee as well. Looking at a couple of these forecast photographs. Some slightly skinnier critical angles off to the north, but look at that elevated mix layer with that sounding. And let me take my head out of the way, and you can see that the photographs are a little bit skinnier, which is a little bit surprising up near that surface, though we'd expect more back surface winds. But across western Tennessee, where you have a stout elevated mix layer that should steepen those lapse rates a little bit more further north. Let's pick up a sounding down here near Columbus. Much more favorable photographs, more broad critical angles, closer to 50 degrees. Temperatures are warmer as well, 72, more backed surface winds along that prefrontal confluence line. So that right there is a textbook photograph and sounding for strong tornado potential. 1 kilometer wind, south-southwest, pushing 60 knots, surface wind due south at about 20 knots. You're looking at about 373, 0 to 1 kilometer, storm relative helicity. Cape, 1129. So we were looking at some of those values, 4 to 500. Just got to assume that these models have that cool bias for the surface temperatures. And look at that at 20Z. Dangerous environment for tornadoes across Tennessee. And it could even be far eastern Arkansas by 19Z as well, Jonesboro area over toward Memphis. Late morning, midday into the early afternoon hours. Could even get some tornado warnings up there. Critical angles are a little bit more shallow up there, but still with a 75-knot low-level jet out of the south-southwest, will able to more than compensate for those relatively shallow critical angles within that photograph. So that's your significant tornado parameter. Anywhere you see the blue or the yellow there is basically indicating potential for strong tornadoes. That includes eastern Arkansas, the entire state of Louisiana, or eastern Louisiana, the entire state of Mississippi, and then eventually that pushes into Alabama. by about 21Z, 3 p.m. That favorable environment basically straddling the Mississippi-Alabama border. Wow. And then eventually it is going to be pushing into Tuscaloosa, Birmingham, 6, 7 p.m. The favorable environment for tornadoes is not going to push very east very rapidly. So you'll probably will have a convective line or a squall line that's going to be pushing off to the east. And there it is. Squall line, likely with embedded tornadoes, central Alabama, all the way down into southern Mississippi, southeastern Louisiana. But it really peters out that section of the line that's moving into northern Georgia, runs out of that instability. Could be some flooding across parts of the southern Appalachians, but then there is your outbreak. I do want to compare some of these models as well. Let's go back to about 22Z time frame, pretty close to the peak of the outbreak, 20Z to 21Z. I want to compare 3 kilometer NAM has a lot less convection out there than the RS often happens, but definitely is hinting at this way prefrontal confluence line way out here, eastern Mississippi into western Alabama. And that one sets up initially out near the I-5 corridor by about 20Z. 3 kilometer NAM does hint at a renegade way out there to the north of Tuscaloosa that's probably elevated, as often happens the morning of these events. You'll usually see those renegades kind of as a sign of things to come later on that will develop way out ahead of the main line. Due southerly winds over the entire warm sector. Big low-level jet, stronger across northern Mississippi. You can even see a hint at this prefrontal confluence line within the low-level jet. A little bit of a gradient in that low-level jet as well. Some confluence being indicated. It all depends on those prefrontal confluence lines and the effectiveness of those at initiating convection. Interestingly, the 3 kilometer NAM still is running a little bit low on the Cape side of things, but still is showing you that uniform area of 1,000 plus. HRRR seems to be more representative. And now the 0Z HRRR is gravitating even a little bit closer to some of those earlier runs that brought a lot more wintry precipitation into the Oklahoma City area as well. So this is going to be a big outbreak tomorrow. Big outbreak of severe weather. There is a chance of a tornado or two tonight across far southern Oklahoma, very close to the Red River area. As that surface low gains strength and then ejects, it does look like it is going to be coming out a little bit further south. But let's take a look at some of the other models as well. The WRF model also is in quite strong agreement with the HRRR in terms of that more robust instability. Look at that by 20Z. Big pipe of 1,000 plus Cape across Mississippi. So in general, a lot of these models are on board with an increase in instability. And of course, that cold bias that happens with the medium and long range models that we've seen so often. Take a look at the precip with this one as well. Yep, all the models are showing these multiple bands, prefrontal confluence bands out ahead of the main front of supercell storms. Jackson up toward Tupelo, back toward Memphis. Memphis will likely be having ongoing tornado warnings across western Tennessee. I think my instinct says to target northern Mississippi because of the stronger low-level jet there, the nose of that cape. So my instinct says to target northern Mississippi, but then my experience says to wait down here for this I-20 confluence band that will set up from central Mississippi up into west central Alabama. Always sets up usually in that same spot. But in general, this model is kind of hinting at a northeastern Mississippi, northwestern Alabama, up into middle Tennessee type of a target. And those upper 60s dew points get all the way up north of Tupelo. Definitely covering the whole entire state of Mississippi. Relatively uniform, 67 to 69 or so. Significant tornado parameter a little bit greater up near Tupelo by about 21Z. Basically here up toward Tupelo looks quite favorable. That's 20Z. Wow, significant tornado parameter. So really this is going to be a big outbreak across Mississippi and Alabama, it appears. Possibly starting as early as midday, even across eastern Arkansas. Looks like these could even be some tornado producers earlier on. So watch out near 18Z, eastern Arkansas. Nasty supercells. That's going to be right around midday. And we're definitely going to have to be thinking about, do we want to target eastern Arkansas or just hang down in the Mississippi area? I do think that environment looks quite favorable across eastern Arkansas. Definitely going to have to be up relatively early for this event. Pretty strong agreement between the HRRR and that WRF model. Wow. Renegades all over the place. Many targets tomorrow. There's going to be numerous storms that likely will have tornado warnings. It'll almost be overwhelming when we're out there chasing this event. It definitely looks like a large-scale outbreak across the Mid-South, Southern Plains. Let's take a look at what the new models are showing for winter weather, snowfall. 10-to-1 ratio. And with that further south track, slightly greater snowfall totals across northwestern Oklahoma, even down to the I-40 corridor. HRRR now is even showing several inches of snow down into Elk City along the I-40 corridor. Not as much in Oklahoma City, trace amounts of snow, but just to the northwest, north of Oklahoma City, possibly several inches of snow up there. 3 kilometer NAM, a little bit less, but still bringing that heavier snow further south, still showing 3 to 4 inches all the way down to Elk. Bigger totals up near Wichita, but it does seem like this further south trend in the HRRR could be happening when you compare it to how the radar is starting to line up. You can kind of see where the surface features are located, and it does look like there is a severe thunderstorm warning to the west of Abilene right now, so that's probably that surface low storm. Let's head on over to that now. So this is probably the storm that's ahead of that surface low that lifts off to the northeast, eventually toward Wichita Falls. So it does look like the radar is supporting that further south ejection of the surface low from the southern high plains, interestingly. And I think that this storm could end up moving off to the northeast, and by about 3 or 4 in the morning, start to move into south central Oklahoma near the Ardmore area, along that Red River zone. So I do think this is going to be a big outbreak. Wouldn't be surprised if it is upgraded even more substantially compared to the enhanced risk right now, but very large area of that strong tornado potential covering the state of Mississippi. I'm in Mississippi now, and I'm going to be activating storm chase mode relatively early in the day tomorrow. We got the Gravitrons that are all charged up and ready to go. We've got the drones ready to launch. I'm charging the GoPros and everything. So we definitely will be ready to deploy instrumentation around these and keep you warned in the path of these storms as well. Just trying to increase awareness in general for this severe weather event so that everybody knows that it's happening. Not only people that live in the area, but anywhere. Looks like Roby, Texas just got hit by a pretty big windbag. Severe thunderstorm warning down there. Just wind, strongest winds south of town, closer to Sweetwater, between Sweetwater and Roby, Texas. Beautiful countryside out there. Love to chase in that area as well. 60-mile-an-hour winds down there, possibly between Sweetwater and Roby. So thank you, everybody, for tuning in to this weather report. I'm going to get some shut-eye, wake up very early, look at the models again, and then it'll be full-blown chase mode for the entire day tomorrow. Never stop chasing.